Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast live. You are looking live at the Flagship Podcast here on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. We're doing a special mailbag Flagship Podcast here in the off week. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by the managing editor of Horns 24/7, Taylor Estes. Taylor, how you doing?
Chip, I'm doing all right. I'm enjoying this bye week. I think we all needed a refresh and reset, as Texas prepares for the final stretch of the season. So it's been a good week so far. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. It's the off week, and Texas goes into the off week on a bit of a sour note. We asked for questions, and they kind of reflect the 41-34 loss the Longhorns suffered at Oklahoma State. Another look, no shame in losing on the road to the number 11 team in the country. And that's been a tough series for Texas here lately. Oklahoma State has the record for most consecutive wins over Texas in Austin. But Taylor, it was the way the Longhorns lost that game. Another, double-digit lead lost, and what really was dispiriting to me was Texas not establishing the run in the second half. Looked like they had it established on a fourth quarter drive that Texas ended up missing a field goal on. They ran it down Oak State's throat there, averaged 7.5 yards per carry, and then inexplicably tried to throw the ball instead of maybe going for it in 4-down territory and just pounding the ball. You had a inspired Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson. But Texas comes away a 41-34 loser. They're 5-3. They are 3-2 in the Big 12, and they've got 4 games left. They'll come out of the off week. They'll play at Kansas State. Then they'll come home and face TCU, and TCU is facing Oklahoma State this week. Steve Sarkisian told his team, you have a homework assignment. Watch that game. I believe it's 2:30 on Fox. And then Texas will go to Kansas and then come home and finish against Baylor. So the Longhorns have to regroup, reset. Isn't that what you said just before we started rolling here?
Yeah, it's definitely time to reset. They need to have, in my opinion, Chip, the best bye week. And not just to get healthy. I think obviously Texas played 8 straight weeks of games. That can be brutal on the health of any college program, honestly. And so it's a good week for them to kind of recuperate, rehab, and reset for sure. Because I think the month of November prior to the start of the season looked like it probably could have been a doable month of games. But I think that the way that the Big 12 has shaped out and has, shaken out, I guess is more the right word there. It's really a tough slate that they have ahead, and they're going to need all of the focus in the world, to be honest, leading into this, because there's a lot of questions. And I feel like when there's a bye week coming off after a loss, especially a loss like Texas had, where they had the lead and then they lost it on the road, that's just a situation where the questions, the angst, the concerns kind of just amp up. And so they really need to just shut out all of the outside noise, honestly, and regroup, because this slate ahead is going to be a really, really tough slate. And as Mac Brown used to always say, people remember November, and people are going to remember this November for Texas football.
Yeah, I mean, some tough news for Texas coming out of the Oklahoma State game with Anthony Cook, one of the heart and soul defenders on that team, a guy who's made big plays this year. We've talked about the 4th down stop against Alabama that allowed Texas to go kick a go-ahead field goal with 1:29 left. Then, of course, the fumble that he forced against Iowa State that sealed the game. And now we wait to see if after these 2 weeks, maybe he could play with a cast on that broken left arm. We'll have to see. But obviously, the members at Horns 24/7 have have questions. It's never as bad as it seems after a loss, usually, and it's never as good as you think after a win. And obviously, Quinn Ewers had one of his toughest games. Um, 19 of 49 passing, less than 40% completion rate, 17 targets of Xavier Worthy, only 4 completions to Worthy. And so there, there's some frustration there. And again, Texas was running the football. I get it. They ran it for 160 in the first half and only 52 in the second half, but they did have 2 incredible long touchdown runs on counter plays. Oklahoma State did adjust to the counter. They reset their nose tackle. I still think there were things that Texas, could have done. They could have gone back to their screen game. Their screen game's been really good for them. We talked about the jet sweep. Where's that with Keelan Robinson and Worthy and their speedsters? But this is what Steve Sarkisian has to come up with because, when the trend continues, when you have lost 5 games with a double-digit lead in the second half, and the entire rest of the Big 12 has had 3 of those situations in the same time span, then it's a trend that's continuing from one season to the next, and it's got to get fixed, and that's on the coach. But there are positives, and we'll get into it. We'll get into the questions, Taylor, and we will have love it or leave it at the end of today's show. So make sure you stay with us all the way until we get to love it or leave it.
Yeah. All right. You ready for the first question, Chip?
Let's do it.
All right. The first one comes from Esteka. I'm sorry if I am butchering that, but have Sark and Quinn downplayed the finger injury? Can't imagine the door closing on my throwing finger and having the nail lifted, not affecting my touch on a throw.
Yeah.
Chip, you can go ahead first with that.
So for those of you who may not have, got all the info, Quinn Ewers, a source told me, had his index finger on his throwing hand slammed in a door early last week. He ended up losing the fingernail. That's painful. And
Yeah.
look, your index finger on your throwing hand is part of the gripping of the football. Steve Sarkisian downplayed it. Ewers downplayed it, but Ewers was wearing a glove in pregame warmup because of it. And you combine that with 23-mile-an-hour winds and the fact that Quinn Ewers doesn't always set his feet. He makes these off-platform throws that, like Patrick Mahomes, that you love. He can sling it from any angle. You can sling it on the run. Doesn't have to set his feet, and that helps him get the ball out really quickly. But it also, when you don't set your feet and drive the football into a 23-mile-an-hour wind, or even with a 23-mile-an-hour wind, it can sail. And I think we saw some of that. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think there was a little bit of the finger issue and the wind. And then it's a hostile environment, Taylor. We talked about it. The paddle people at Oklahoma State, that was Quinn Ewers' first start in a true road game. And, he didn't have half the Cotton Bowl burnt orange
Right.
to lift him up. And so, those were the factors, I think, that were involved there. And I'm just a little surprised, again, that knowing that and seeing the results from the first half, that Sarkisian didn't, mandate running the football like he did against Iowa State. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely would impact it. I mean, I've lost a fingernail one time in my life, and it was when I was younger, and that hurts. I mean, it really does, and it really does impact anything that you touch with it. I don't know if you've ever lost a fingernail, Chip, but I mean, it's definitely something, and I think that they probably are downplaying it, to be honest. And I don't really understand the reason. I don't know if maybe Sark just doesn't want it to come off like he is excusing the performance or anything like that, but it was impacting him. And I agree with you when it comes to the hostile environment. Quinn Ewers obviously was struggling throwing the football, struggling to connect with his wide receivers. Just was off his game. He has had that one off game. It's the first time we've really seen him have that. He's still really young in his career. I agree with you. I don't know why you didn't just continue running the football, because Texas was finding some at least big home run type of plays when they were running the ball. I also kind of wonder why Hudson Card wasn't called upon. I know that, maybe Sark was concerned about shaking Quinn Ewers' confidence or something, or making him second guess himself. I don't know, but that's another question too. But at the end of the day, I think it was pretty apparent that something going on with Quinn Ewers in his throwing hand. I mean, you don't have a glove on your hand for a reason in pregame, was impacting the way that he, like the touch on the football, and overall the outcome of the game. So yeah, I think that they must be downplaying it. I don't know why they would. I mean, do you understand why you would downplay that, Chip?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
Sarkisian, he downplayed Casey Thompson had that thumb injury, and when it was in cold weather, it wouldn't warm up and it wouldn't allow him to get a good grip on the football. In warmer weather, he could get a grip on the football. And against Iowa State, he got benched, 7 plays into the game. And Sark said, no, his thumb wasn't an issue when it was. So I don't know what's going on there. And maybe Sark just doesn't like the quarterback to have excuses if he was, and I believe Quinn was throwing it well in practice. That's why I think the wind played a
Mhm.
role in this thing too.
Yeah.
And so, I think that was maybe Sark's way of saying, we just gotta play better. And
Right.
we're not ever gonna make excuses for injuries. But it's that was a tough one because against Iowa State, Hunter Decker's got hot. That you don't want a hot passer on the field. The way you keep him off the field is running the football. Well, Spencer Sanders is dangerous in a different way.
Mhm.
He's dangerous in that he can get hot passing, but if the passing isn't there, he can run, and we saw that. And there were some frustrating plays that Steve Sarkisian pointed out on Monday. Ovia Gofu spying on Spencer Sanders and leaves his responsibility to go help sniff out the screen that the defense had already sniffed out. And Sanders just runs where Ovia Gofu vacates. Jaron Thompson doesn't clean up the hit on Bryson Green when Deshaun Jameson's trying to wrestle him to the ground. Bryson Green's a big dude, and then Green breaks free and runs for the game-winning points. This team gets a little tentative
Mhm.
in tight situations, or certain players do, and more players need to step up and deliver. And that's what I think in this off week, these players have to look in the mirror and say, okay, when the game is on the line and we're still in it, it's a one possession game or a tie game, man, we got to crank it up. We got to play our best football and
Yeah.
demand that of each other, because that was a winnable game.
Yeah.
And so was Texas Tech. And we saw the defense make some uncharacteristic plays um, when they're at home, but the tentative nature on the road is just too much. And
Right.
so,
Well,
all
I
right.
also think one thing though with that, just real quick, a lot of times teams take on the personality of the head coach. And
Yep.
I think Steve Sarkisian in times, especially in road games when they've had the lead, has been tentative as well. It's like he's almost calling plays, or, playing not to lose, or yeah, not to lose, not, instead of playing to win. And I think that Sark needs to take a look in the mirror too with that, because with the team taking on the personality of the head coach, this has been consistent under Steve Sarkisian. Obviously, it's a different roster, but that's still showing up in road games. It starts with him, in my opinion, and he's got to take a big look in the mirror too.
Yeah, he needs to prepare a second half script. We never see trick plays from him in the second half. We don't see the the blackjack Joey McGuire attitude of we're going for it. We're going for it on fourth down. We're on the road. We're gonna take it to them. And that's why I thought maybe we would see Texas in 4-down territory instead of on the drive where they missed the field goal. Instead, just pound it. Bijan Robinson makes 3 yards on first down. It's 2nd and 7. Okay, run it again with tempo. Just keep that defense under duress. If he only gains 3, then it's 3rd and 4. Okay, run it again. Try and get 3. Try and get them all, but then it's 4th. Run it again. I mean, that's a mindset.
Right.
That's a we're more physical. We're going to dominate mindset that has to come from the head coach. You're right.
Yeah.
All right. You
All
want me
right.
to give you a question here?
I'll read them to you, and
Okay.
then I'll go first on this one though. This is from N Mural 2011. What area/position on the team has improved the most? Still needs improving, and individual player who has improved the most. So mine's going to be kind of weird. I think that the area and position group that has improved the most is probably the offensive line, in my opinion. They haven't been perfect, but I had very low expectations going into the season with this offensive line just because of how young it was. I mean, there's not a single, well, like Christian Jones is the only upperclassman that is on this offensive line, but with so many true freshmen, I thought it was going to be a bit of a cluster at times. And I feel like it's performed better, and they're not perfect. Again, they've made mistakes. They haven't, been, they're not playing like at an Alabama offensive line level or an SEC offensive line level yet. However, I do think that they've improved the most. I also think that they need to improve more too, because the better that the front of the offense is, the better that the overall offense is going to run. So it's kind of a twofold. I think that they've improved the most, but they still need more improving. And then the individual player who has improved the most, in my opinion, is probably Jatavian Sanders. I mean, this is a guy that, he played his true freshman year, but it was mainly special teams, didn't really get a lot of game reps. Jeff Banks really worked with him as a true freshman and challenged him in spring football, basically saying that you're nowhere near where you should be, where your talent level is. And he really took it and run with it. So I would say he is the player who has improved the most this season and probably surprised the most too. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that the biggest improvement is the run defense. Last year, Texas was a swinging gate for opposing offenses, giving up more than 200 yards rushing per game. It more than 5.2 yards per carry, second worst in school history this year. They're one of the best run defenses in the Big 12, number 3, giving up 121.6 yards per game on the ground and 3.3 yards per carry. And to me, the most improved player is Jalen Ford, who is a big reason that the run defense is so much better, because that guy is reading his keys. He's doing his homework. He knows what he's looking for. He's leading the Big 12 in tackles, had the big game against Iowa State. I thought he's been dropping into coverage beautifully all year. And he had that great interception in the end zone that turned the momentum in the Iowa State game, and then the big fumble recovery after Anthony Cook's forced fumble. So, and credit to the defensive line as well. They're inspired. They're playing more aggressively. They're penetrating, which is disrupting opposing teams' running game and getting pressure on the quarterback by collapsing the pocket. So I will say those two.
All right. And I'm going to take a question here from the YouTube channel here. What are your final record predictions and keys to success for Texas?
Well, I said before the season that Texas would go. I said a successful year in 2022 would be 8 wins and Arch Manning. They've already got the commitment from Arch Manning. They obviously have to go 3-1 down the stretch to get to 8 wins. If they beat K-State, I'll say that Texas gets to 8 wins.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose to K-State, I think they're 7-5.
Yeah. But bowl game, there could be an 8
bowl
wins.
game, you can get to 8 wins with the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that, well, I would say 7-5 regular season is probably attainable. There's 2 home games. So I guess that the 2 games that I think Texas could win are home games. And that would be tough because TCU is one of those home games. I think Gary Patterson, knowing that personnel inside and out, knowing that team, knowing the weaknesses of Max Dugan and a lot of the players on that team, I think that will play to Texas' advantage. I'm not saying that they'll for sure win that game, but I think it's probably more of a winnable game than many people will be expecting, with TCU sitting here at 7-0. I believe they are right now. So yeah, I would say 7-5 regular season. They could get to 8 wins if the bowl game. That would be best case scenario, I would say right now. The keys to success for Texas is to play like they do at home on the road. That's what they have to do. At the end of the day, that's been the biggest thing that they haven't done. If they can find a way to do that, at K-State, at Kansas. I've been under the weather, so I apologize I sound this way, but and at Kansas, then that's improvement, I would say.
Well, and remember, Texas beat K-State last year when Skylar Thompson got hurt.
Right.
And they went up against Will Howard. Now you've got Adrian Martinez, who's been one of the big success stories in the conference after being a turnover machine at Nebraska. The guy's been really efficient, and he played one series against TCU, went out with an injury. Will Howard came in and played really well, got K-State a 28-10 lead. But then they lost their stud linebacker, Daniel Green, who I think is going to be out for a while. That injury hurts K-State probably more than the Adrian Martinez injury. Honestly, they're paper thin at linebacker at K-State. And so we'll see, again, big game this week between K-State and Oklahoma State. Let's see how K-State looks. That game is in Manhattan, and let's see how they bounce back from the loss against TCU. By the way, TCU has trailed in 3 of their 5 Big 12 victories in the second half and found a way to win. They trailed K-State. They trailed Kansas. They trailed Oklahoma State. They were down 24-7 to Oklahoma State and 30-16 in the third quarter. Came back, found a way to win. So, kudos to TCU. They believe they're never out of it, and Texas Tech's playing well now too with Baron Morton at quarterback. So they could end up being a disruptor here. TCU still has to play Texas Tech, by the way. All right, what's our next question, Taylor?
Next one, I'll let you go with this one. Any news on team morale and an update on the Savion Red situation from Abe 91?
Yeah, I mean, I think team morale is fine. I mean, they're despondent about the loss, and now they're stewing in it. Hopefully no one makes any bad decisions here over the 2 weeks, because if they can get their minds right, they can still, shake things up here, and you never know. This is a tough conference. We just said it. There are teams you got to watch out for that can rise up and shake things up. Kansas was 5-0, and now they've lost 3 in a row. So, but the update on Savion Red. So Savion Red is a freshman receiver. He had a missed assignment in the game, and he was frustrated about it. He probably didn't handle it the best way he should have in talking to Brennan Marion, because I think everyone saw that he, Quinn Ewers kind of had to tell him to relax a little bit. But he's a young player. He's excited. He wants to play. We know Sark doesn't rotate a lot at receiver, so when guys get in and they have an opportunity, you don't want to mess it up. And so sometimes those situations can lead to a better, more work put in by that player. Hopefully that's the case with Savion Red, because everyone really thinks highly of him as a future prospect on this team. So that's what I know about it.
Yeah, and I heard similar. It was a young player kind of in the heat of the moment, wanting to see the field more, I think, and then, had the issue, the misassignment there. So I don't think it's anything to be worried about right now from everything I've heard.
Yeah.
All right. Next one here for you is From TA Craig 15, does a fan base need to cool their jets and trust Sark in the process?
Yes and no. Yes. I mean, the yes part of that is, look, Steve Sarkisian has shown that he knows how to dial up plays. I mean, getting all these leads. I know this is like if Texas would have been back and forth with Oklahoma State the whole game, fans would probably feel more like the Alabama game,
Right.
where it's just a slugfest and there are good plays here and there. But because Texas got up 31-17 and had the 14 penalties, they're just, and Ewers couldn't connect with Worthy, and the another loss where they had a lead, it just makes fans want to break furniture and kick the dog and all that stuff. So I get it, but this team is better. I mean, we just pointed out. I mean, Taylor pointed out the offensive line. Kelvin Banks is a monster. I mean, that counter play, he wipes out the left side of Oklahoma State's defensive line on both of those counter play touchdown runs. This guy is everybody agrees. I'm writing about him a little bit in the Insider this week. This guy is special, and wow, I didn't expect this. So, and the run defense is better. Jalen Ford's leading the Big 12 in tackles. Look, this is a tough league. It's a field goal league right now. You got to make plays down the stretch to win games. And that's the part where Sark's got to help them. And he's got to be able to look in the mirror. And I don't know if it's scripting some trick plays or writing something on the mirror to remind him, stay aggressive, yell at the team to be a dominant physical running team. We're going to be a dominant physical running team in the second half of games. We got Bijan Robinson for 4 more games. Let's let that guy shine. I mean, that's what I'd be saying, Taylor. Obviously, you can't have this continue and go on and on and on. They've got to win a game on the road, a true road game, and get this thing solved before the end of the season, or it's gonna linger, and fans are gonna question everything. They're gonna look at every game Sark's ever coached and say, "See, he did it here in Washington at USC," and
Yeah.
that's you don't want that. You don't want that because look, Mac Brown got off to a rough start in his coaching career and ended up winning a national championship at Texas. Now, Mac Brown was like at Appalachian State and Tulane. Sark's been at Washington, USC, and Texas, some blue bloods. So, but that's my thought. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cooled down a little bit. I understand why people are heated right now because this trend has continued, and I agree. Texas, they have to win at least one game on the road because I will say, regardless of what the end of the season record is, if they go, what would it be? They would have what, 4 road games this season, true road games.
4 true road games.
If they go 0-4, that's a regression, regardless of what the outcome of the season is compared to last year, because they at least won 1 true road game at TCU. And so they've got to figure that out. I kind of agree with you. It's kind of, cool down, but and trust the process. However, there's reason to be concerned if that does continue. And I think, Sark is a really good play caller. I was talking to a longtime football coach over the weekend, and I will say, he pointed out that when you're a play caller and the head coach, it's so much that is on your plate that people don't even recognize. And as a play caller, you're looking ahead 1 to 2 plays, not necessarily at what's going on right now. I think what also needs to happen is that Sark needs to trust the people in his headset that are also trying to help him maneuver through the game. It almost seems like he's on an island when he's calling plays. And there's a lot of people on the staff that could help him out seeing what's going on in the current play that Sark is currently not really watching. He's looking ahead to the next 1 or 2 plays. That's what happens, and then he has to look at the defense too. I mean, there's a lot of things on his plate. He's got to trust his assistant coaches and the people that are on the headset that are watching every play as they go down and telling him what is happening, what they're seeing, and that should help him in the play calling. It doesn't seem like that is happening right now, especially when, later in games, especially in road games, it seems like he's just sticking to what what the safe play call is. And it's, I think he's missing a lot of in-game situational type of plays, that are happening. So I would say that Sark also needs to trust his process and his assistants and their voices too.
Yeah, and I just say this: when you're on the road, you can take a few chances.
Yeah.
You can bring the heat. You can bring, you know, you can take a few chances. I would like to have seen them get after Spencer Sanders a little bit more. I know he's a runner, but sometimes you've got to blitz the runner. You can't always sit back there and try to maintain rush or your rush lanes and surround the pocket. Spencer Sanders is too good. He'll find Bryson Green, and so take a chance. Especially when you're up 31-17. I mean, special teams played great in that game too.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
All right. We're going to go with this question from Burnt Blood 83. If we struggle to finish the season strong and end up worse than 8-4, what commits could you see start to look elsewhere?
I mean, I'm sure everyone wants to know if Arch Manning is, that guy. I think Arch Manning wants to come and help. And that's the other thing. You have to get the quarterback right. We've seen Quinn Ewers play well. He's going to get better. And Sark has developed quarterbacks who've gone to the NFL. This was Quinn Ewers' first true road start, his first one. Colt McCoy had a good year in 2006 and struggled in 2007, and then should have won the Heisman in 2008. I know asking a Texas fan to have patience is like, asking the Pope to change religions, but there are things trending up, looking up. The key is not letting the morale, the doubt get into that locker room. And that's where Sark has got to manage this thing and keep them on, a high trajectory in terms of their energy, their focus, because he's got to maintain progress, Taylor. I will say that he's got to maintain progress to keep not only the recruiting going, but the momentum around the fan base, everything, so that they have something to look forward to each and every time Texas takes the field and into next year. I like watching Bijan Robinson every time he takes the field. I told him after the Iowa State game, I was like, dude, you were making 4 moves to get 4 yards. Like, that was spectacular. Making guys miss in a phone booth, churning, falling forward. I mean, the guy wants to help his team win. You see that every time he takes the field. So give him the rock, Taylor.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he's one of the best players in college football. Use number 5. Use him. And number 2 also. I mean, let's be honest. The two of them are, I would say, arguably the best 1-2 punch in college football. You've got to use what you have. As you said, you only have 4 more games guaranteed with Bijan Robinson on this team. So use him while you have him, and give him the opportunity to shine too. I mean, this kid has done everything he can for this university. He's not getting anywhere near the national attention that he should be getting right now because the team has not played up to the standard where the national eyes would be on Texas as much. So yeah, I agree with that. This next one, I'll handle this one first, Chip. You can chime in afterwards. From Papa Horn. Am I wrong to think that Quinn's struggles and inconsistency have more to do with him not playing in 2 years and only having minimal live game experience against college level defenses? 100%, like 100%. I mean, he is a young quarterback. Remember, he should be technically a true freshman this year, but because he did reclassify to the 2021 class and then enroll at Ohio State, he had 2 snaps. How many snaps? 2 or 3 snaps or something like that at Ohio State. He got no. Yeah, he did not go through fall camp there. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman, but playing as a true freshman right now. And so there's no doubt anytime you have a young quarterback, there's going to be ups and downs. You've seen his you've seen where he can be really, really good. And I think that his ceiling is even higher than he has showed right now. But I think 100% that him, not playing for 2 years essentially and having very minimal live game experience against college level defenses did impact him on the road against Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State, remember, what were they, the number 11 team in the country when they were playing that game? This is no scrub team that Texas was playing. If he was playing, I don't want to say that Texas Tech is a scrub team, so I don't think that they are. But if he would have started against Texas Tech and showed this, then you can maybe be like, what is going on there? But no, this was a really solid Oklahoma State team. They, were in contention for the Big 12 title last season. They're in contention for it this season, at least for a Big 12 title bid. So, yeah, I mean, I think that all of that with his inexperience and his youth 100% led to some of the struggles and were difficult to shake. And, it's a learning experience for him. What you hope now moving forward is that you don't see that consistently, especially in road games.
Yeah, and as Quinn Ewers gets more confident, he's going to give Steve Sarkisian plays to run based on what he's seeing out on the field, and that will be a dialogue. And so when they get into late game situations, Quinn Ewers will start or should. Most of the great quarterbacks do. They see things and say, okay. And the great running backs and the receivers all will come back and say, okay, this guy's playing off me. Let's run this. And there will be more of a dialogue between, player and coach. And that could help Sarkisian as well, because the hard part when a coach gets a lead like that, especially an offensive minded coach, is to protect the lead instead of trying to extend the lead. And Sark needs to incorporate a little more of the blackjack Joey Maguire mentality and say, Mike Leach, we're going to put it on them. We're going to keep scoring, and it's on them to stop us and cut it loose.
Right.
Cut it
You
loose.
can't have the mantra all. Yeah, you can't have the mantra. You can't have the mantra all gas, no brakes if you don't actually show it, in games. You can't call that your mantra, right? I mean, it's like a lot of times it's like all brakes, no gas, and when they have those leads because they go into protection mode, and you can't have that. Like, stick with your mantra when you're calling plays, especially in road games. I'm going to take one from YouTube here, Chip. From Pet Rooster, how much of an impact do you think Anthony Cook's injury will have on the Longhorn D?
Well, I think it's substantial. That's why I'm like, is there any chance he can play with a cast on? Because he's the guy who has shown up when it matters most, when the game's on the line. He's still delivering. He's all gas and no brakes. Jaron Thompson, on the other hand, and I've written about this, his play tends to dip when the game tightens up. And we saw it in the Oklahoma State game. He absolutely should have come in and cleaned Bryson Green's clock when Deshaun Jameson's trying to wrestle him to the ground on the play that ends up being a 41-yard touchdown. Instead, Jaron Thompson thinks that Jameson's going to wrestle this guy to the ground. He's a big dude. You got to hats to the ball. The thing that we see about the Texas defense, and we've seen, especially when they're more aggressive up front, when they're pushing the pocket and twisting and stunting, the defense flies to the ball. This team likes to play aggressive. And then when things slow down or a team's coming back, the defense or certain players slow down. That cannot happen. And that has to be coached out of them. Blake Gideon, you got to coach that out of your guys. Terry Joseph, you got to coach that out of your guys because this team should be swarming more to the ball, not less when the momentum is changing in a game. And that's something that has to change.
Yeah. And Blake Gideon played, at Texas, played defensive back at Texas. I would say it's a little surprising, if you know Blake Gideon. I remember covering him as a player. He was a spitfire. I mean, even when he would answer questions, it was like he would be one that would get almost not confrontational or anything, but he would, if he didn't like a question, you knew he didn't like a question. You know what I mean? And it's like he's got to get that type of mentality out of his players, especially being the last line of the defense. Jaron Thompson did that Oklahoma State play reminded me way too much of the Oklahoma State game last year with the way he was playing that ultimately led to him getting benched. And you've got to get some more dog mentality there. And especially with Anthony Cook, if he is unable to play with a cast on, as Chip has, been almost trying to speak into existence, I think a little
Trying to
bit.
manifest it.
Yeah, exactly. They need like 110% effort from the secondary. And I would say that the secondary, when Anthony Cook isn't on the field, gives about 85% effort. And that's got to change. The
Yeah, and they do
safeties.
have to. I agree with Sark. They've got to develop those young DBs. Where's JD Coffey? Where's BJ Allen? Um, those guys need to get Mo Blackwell. These guys need to get developed. We saw Michael Taff out there. He's a great story. The Westlake walk-on who was the host of Arch Manning on his official visit. And look, everyone's blaming that touchdown in the end zone on Taff. That was zone coverage. Taff was trying to get over to help. He wasn't the main responsibility there. There was a coverage bust underneath on that. So, but they've got to get depth developed here. I thought it would be better than it is.
Yeah, I agree. All right, here's one from Longhorn SD. Any rumors about assistant coach changes after the season? I have to imagine guys like Jeff Banks and Kyle Flood will be hot commodities.
Yeah, it's too early to go there. I mean, in terms of guys getting other jobs or head coaching jobs, the carousel really hasn't fired up yet. That'll happen more toward late November, December. So I think we're premature on that one.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, this is my opinion. I would be surprised if there were offers, say like with Jeff Banks and Kyle Flood, unless it was a head coaching offer. I don't know if they would make a lateral move.
Right, I agree, and that's what I'm talking about. I mean, if the right head coaching job came open, I think those guys want to be head coaches for sure. And so we'll just have to wait and see, because right now, Washington State, as I've reported and mentioned on the Flagship Podcast numerous times, Jeff Banks would have gotten the Washington State job last year, if not for Monkeygate, honestly. And that's really unfortunate for Jeff Banks, because he is a really good coach. And I know Texas fans are thankful that they still have him, but he's the guy I thought would become a head coach first from Sark's staff.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. All right, this one's from Big O61. What does Sark think about the defense at this point as a head coach at Texas?
Well, I think he's got to be excited that their run defense is so much better. I mean, they're shutting people down in the ground game. Now they've got to make sure that they're not giving up big play, in the passing game, because they were really good about not giving up big pass play touchdowns until the Iowa State game, when Ryan Watts went out and we saw, I guess we don't have a plan B. They got to like plan E in the Iowa State game, but they did give up a 54-yard touchdown pass. And then, against Oklahoma State, swarm the football, but they give up the 41-yard touchdown that proves to be the game-winning points for Oklahoma State. And Texas had not been giving up those big, long passing play touchdowns. So that has to get tightened up. But for the most part, for the better part of the season, the Texas defense has played well. They've had a couple of stretches after the Ryan Watts injury against Iowa State in the passing game. And then obviously without Anthony Cook, although the defense played really well in the third quarter of the Oklahoma State game, amazingly well. I think they forced 6 punts in the first 7 Oklahoma State possessions. And The defense did what it was supposed to do. I see all these comments here in our chat box over here about, fire PK.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now hold on a minute.
The
Texas
defense is playing far better than what any
the
fans are giving
defense
it
is
credit
playing
for,
pretty darn
honestly.
well. I mean, Jalen Ford, Tavondre Sweat's playing better. Keandre Coburn's collapsed in the pocket. Moro Joe. I mean, still waiting for Alfred Collins to get the light bulb to go on. I guess he's gonna take over next year, but this defense is playing so much better than it was a year ago, giving up 10 points less per game. Heck, I said if Texas only, if Texas gave up 10 points less per game, they'd win 8 games. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So here's one from our YouTube channel. Are you disappointed in Worthy's effort? Seems like if it's not a perfect ball, he doesn't go all out for the catch. See Quinn's first interception.
Yeah, Worthy is an interesting guy. He's great in a runaway situation. He's great on post routes and streaks. But when he's going to have to go make a contested catch and there's probably going to be some physical contact with the defender, I don't know that he tracks the ball as aggressively as he should. It seems like he isn't tracking the ball as aggressively as he should this year. And that's disappointing because the guy leads the Big 12 in touchdown receptions. I mean, he's a freak athlete. He's a jet, and he's got unbelievable talent. Now, he does have some uncharacteristic drops. The pass to the corner of the end zone on that fourth quarter drive, I keep saying Texas should have run the ball. That should have been a touchdown. Worthy stumbled. That ball was right where it was supposed to be, and he didn't come down with it. So that's something for Brendan Marion and Steve Sarkisian to get on the same page with Xavier Worthy, because it seems like it's been going on for a while, and that's not a reputation Xavier Worthy wants to gain either, as a guy who looks like he could be in line with some of those Alabama receivers like Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy, those speed merchants who've gone on and done really well in the NFL. What do you think, Taylor?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I think, a little disappointing at times, honestly, when you see his effort or lack thereof, because I agree with this question. It doesn't seem like he makes the extra effort to um, make those contested catches, or if it's a 50-50 ball, it's just one of those things. It's kind of, it's a little bizarre. And what is a little concerning, Chip, is effort is really hard to coach. Effort a lot of times is something you just are, it's kind of like leadership. You can't really teach somebody to be a leader if you're not always, somebody that's willing to lead or step up. If you're not always somebody that's willing to give 100%, it's hard to get that out of people. I think that effort's probably more coachable than leadership, but still, I mean, he's got to have a kind of a come to Jesus talk, I think, with Brennan Marion and with Steve Sarkisian, because he has all of the skills, all of the talent to be one of the top receivers in college football. And we're talking about his effort. All Americans, the one thing you shouldn't be talking about is a lack of effort. And when you have a young quarterback who is struggling, you got to give 110% effort to help him out. And I don't think he did that. I think, there were some balls that came his way. They were terrible passes. Like, let's just be honest. They were bad throws, hard to catch, all of that. But there were some that were the 50-50 type of balls. And I agree with you. I think he loses the ball. He doesn't track it very well when it's in the air. That's a problem. It's been consistent throughout the year. And something's got to change. Something's got to click with him. And I hope it does, because I think he's a good kid. He has a ton of talent. He has a very, very high ceiling. But if he gets this, kind of personality of being, maybe, I don't want to say lazy, but if this continues, people are going to start thinking that way. And I'm not saying he is that way now. He's just got to give more effort, especially when games are on the line. And I just don't think we've seen that really much from him.
Yeah, and I would say it's more diva than lazy.
Yeah.
And that's that. You don't want that either, because that's almost cliche for receivers. You think of Jordan Whittington laying out, making that full extension dive for the football against Oklahoma. And that's stuff that you love to see,
Right.
because that's the great play with the extra effort that you were just talking about.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let me pull. I'll do one more before we get to love it or leave it. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Last one. I got to find the best one here. I don't know. I'm going to go with a YouTube channel. So we went through a lot of our Horns 24/7 member questions. That one's about that. Let's see here. Oh, I almost hit one. I'll go with one of our member questions actually. So let's go with any truth to donor/boosters growing frustrated with Sark, Abe 91.
No, I mean, the university's aligned right now with Sark. I mean, from the regent's chair to Jay Hartzell, the president, to Chris Del Conte. Um, you've got a young quarterback, you got a young offensive line, you've got some holes you got to fill on your defense. You've got to look in the portal for help at safety because Anthony Cook is moving on after this season, and you got to develop your young corners, and you've got talented corners: Jalen Gilbo, Terrence Brooks, um, you know, uh, Austin Jordan. So those guys got to be developed. Those guys got to keep working. I mean, that's why Terry Joseph, Blake Gideon, the great coaches have the next guy ready. That's all the great coaches, Bill Belichick, on down. And
Nick Saban.
that's on the position coaches.
Hmm.
If the next guy comes in and he's not able to do it, okay, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing with your guys? What on earth are you doing? Are you not getting through to these guys about how you're one play away and you better be ready? The whole season could hang in the balance based on a play you do or don't make. And I mean, ask Anthony Cook. Everyone's like, man, Texas could have lost that Iowa State game. Yeah, they could have.
Hmm.
Iowa State was in field goal range when Cook made that play. And so that's on the position coaches. And if I'm Steve Sarkisian, I'm getting on my assistants after these last 2 weeks and saying, and I imagine he has because he told us that they needed to develop depth in this off week.
Right.
So when he's talking to his coaches, it should have been like, look, bleeps, you're the highest paid staff in the Big 12. You got it good. Now get this team developed, get this roster developed, get your second and third guys developed, because we can't have that. We can't, we're trying to get over the hump here. We're a team that's got a fragile psyche on the road. We got to have guys ready to make a play.
Right. I would say, honestly, when people talk about, how we were saying just a little bit ago about there's comments about fire PK and stuff. I would say the people that need to be worried about job security should probably be the secondary coaches, because this is 2 straight years where the secondary has not had enough depth. Now you can give them a tiny bit of a pass, year 1, but they're in year 2 now. They've had a chance to get recruits in. They've had a chance to go to the portal. They did go to the portal, get Ryan Watts. That was a huge ad for Texas, no doubt about it. Don't want to ignore that. But the fact that Texas had to shift so many players in the secondary with Anthony Cook moving, to safety to try to help out the secondary, I mean, that's a problem. And if we're pointing to the secondary play breaking down late in games, just like it did last year, I would say that if I'm not calling for anybody to be fired in any way, but it's not PK there. It's the position coaches. Pete Kwiatkowski doesn't teach or coach the secondary. These are the position coaches. It's on them. And so, I think the frustration should probably be a little bit more with them. And I agree with you. I don't think there's truth to the frustration with Sark. And if there is, that's got to stop. I mean, let's be real. The only consistent thing that Texas football has done in the last decade is change, head coaching change, coordinator changes from top to bottom, and nothing has actually changed. The outcome, the games, the records have not changed. If anything, it's gotten worse sometimes. So changing the head coach is not the answer. Texas needs to stick with Sark and give him the chance to see if he can be the guy that does bring Texas back. They give him a 6-year contract for a reason. I think you've got to let him at least get through year 4 or 5 before you even talk about anything, because the only consistency again that Texas has had is change, and it really has not led to change on the field or change in the record. So starts recruiting well. I don't think Pete Kwiatkowski is as bad as a defensive coordinator as a lot of Texas fans are pointing to. I think they have really good coaches on, various positions on the staff. I think Bo Davis is a great coach. Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks, Brennan Marion, Tashard Choice. I would say the secondary coaches need to step up. But I don't think change from, the head coach or coordinators is the right move at any time right now, Chip.
Yeah. And you've got to have the quarterback position right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Texas fans across the board would say, oh, yeah, Quinn Ewers, after 3 starts, has shown promise. I mean, what he did against Oklahoma, what he did against Alabama in the first quarter, he's going to get used to seeing. We've talked about this. He's going to get used to seeing that 3 high safety Sudoku puzzle that Iowa State has brought to college football. It's tough. He's never seen anything like it in high school. And so he's got to get used to seeing it. He's got to watch a lot of film. He's got to get comfortable with it. He should be watching a ton of film these next 2 weeks because K-State's going to bring that, and Baylor. So this is part of the growing process. And then you can't have the mistakes. And people are mad about the penalties. I get it. But up until that game, Texas was one of the least penalized teams in the Big 12. Right. So that was an uncharacteristic situation, but you go on the road, you got to hold your composure. That's on Sark. Sark's got to make sure that the team is got, that they can communicate silently, that guys are composed and aren't flinching and making, panic mistakes because the paddle people are whacking, the side of the stadium and making it sound like they're being attacked by, a bunch
Paddles.
of clapboards.
Yeah. And it really is loud. I mean, I've said this before, even leading up to the game. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say when I've had to be on the field for that game, there were for days after, literally I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd hear the swatting at the paddles in my head. Like I thought I was going crazy because I was like, oh my gosh, why is this still going on? And it was like days on end afterwards. So it does get loud. It's a small stadium, but it's definitely a hostile environment. They brought it for sure. And I think it definitely impacted Texas in
And
that
Sark
game.
needs to challenge his guys. He needs to quit talking to him like a shrink and saying, we need to work our way through. No, we need to be demons. We need to be demons in the second half because right now, every team, Mike Gundy said it, if you hang around Texas, they'll give it to you in the second half. And that's got to change. And that comes from the top down.
That should be honestly on the whiteboard in the meeting rooms that Mike Gundy's saying. I mean, that's not a good sign right there. Gavin, what's up? I see your comments, by the way, but sorry, I'm just in the YouTube comments. All right, Chip, you want to get to some love it or leave it here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. If you're watching on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will not take a break. But if you're listening on the podcast, we'll take a quick break. But stay tuned. We'll have love it or leave it coming up. All right. My first love it or leave it for you, Chip, is love it or leave it. Your biggest disappointment from the Oklahoma State loss was Steve Sarkisian not doing more to establish the run in the second half.
100%. I love this. I was so disappointed because to me, the biggest takeaway from the win over Iowa State was Texas's ability to run the ball against the number 1 run defense and grind out that win because it kept Hunter Deckers off the field. That Iowa State defense is legit. And then you go to Oklahoma State, which has got 3 starters out, 2 on the defensive line. Their safety, Trey Sterling, was out, and
their lead receiver was out too on the other side.
You don't keep pounding away. Look, even if you struggle to run the ball early in games, you keep at it. Texas ran the ball for 160 yards in the first half. Then Sark eased up in the second half. No, you keep pounding it. I don't care if they adjusted to take away the counter. Then, what's your answer to that? Okay, then run a power play to the other side. I mean, that bothered me, still bothers me more than anything because you just threw away that progress that you made against Iowa State, where offensive line was making the push for Bijan and Roshan. Bijan and Roshan can make plays even if they don't get the push. You've got to run the football. You've got to be a dominating running football team in the second half of games. That's how you close out wins. 100%. I love this. Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, I think if you watch that game, if you're a Texas fan, if you're anybody watching that game, you would have to love this. I think that the run game, as you said, you've got to stick to it. And when you have the best running back room in college football, why are you not sticking with it? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It's one of the I don't know why that Sark goes that way. I just don't get it. I don't. There's no rhyme or reason. I talked to coaches, after that game, they had the same thing. Why are you not giving the ball to the best player in college football or one of the other best running backs, and Roshan Johnson too? Plus, Keelan
I'll even
Robinson's
take a
there. I mean,
screen pass to Bijan Robinson and
exactly.
Roshan Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like at the end of the game, I don't even think Bijan Robinson was on the field.
Yeah,
It's like,
that was
why? Because yeah, they're
hugely.
threats in the receiving game too. I mean, they're a complete, package, honestly. And the run, they can catch the ball, they can catch it out of the backfield and run. I mean, they are a lethal weapon. And it's like almost like Sark has that lethal weapon in his hand for a little bit and then puts it in his pocket. And you're like, what are you doing? So yeah, I agree. I think that's the biggest disappointment, 100%. All right, my next one for you, Chip, is love it or leave it. Your biggest concern about the team during the bye week is morale.
I'm going to leave this. I'm not concerned about the morale. I do think this team is more together than people think. My concern is about the mindset. And Steve Sarkisian, he needed to have a flamethrower conversation with this football team, not ripping them, but telling them we're going to be this. We are going to be a physically dominating running team in the second half of games. And defensively, if you are not trying to take, if you're not swarming to the football, you're coming off the field. I don't care. I don't care if we have to play walk-ons.
Yeah.
If I see you, thinking your teammate has made the tackle, you're coming off the field.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to play plays in front of everybody so everyone knows who, so that kid is like never again, and rally the troops. That's what Steve Sarkisian, that's my biggest concern is, changing the mindset as you go back out on the road. They cannot hang their heads again, Taylor. If we see them go out to play K-State and they look shaky in penalties and busted cover, man, that's going to really be tough to overcome. Then my biggest concern will be morale.
Yeah.
But right now it's just adjusting that mindset because they're a good football team. I mean, they're doing a lot of good things and they have some really good players at key positions. Adjust the mindset. That's my biggest concern, to more of an attack mindset. How about you, Taylor?
Yeah. No, I think you stated it perfectly. I totally agree with that. And when you say, if you're thinking that a guy's going to make a play, if you're thinking on the field, you're not playing full out. Thinking is honestly probably one of the worst things you can do as a player, because it means that you're hesitant, you're more timid, and that's what you're seeing. And you see it almost seems time and again, and it's unfortunate. And yeah, I'd say mindset's the biggest thing. But at the same time, Chip, it has to start from Steve Sarkisian. He's got to change his mindset in games when he has the lead. If he's being tentative or timid in his play calling, or isn't putting the foot on the gas and is putting the foot on the brakes, the team is going to follow suit. And so that's got to change from the top down. So I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to leave it with you saying that mindset has to be the number one thing, because you're right. Texas is a good football team. Like you can hate the Longhorns all you want, but if you watch them play, you're like, dang, there are some really, really talented elite players that are going to have long careers in the NFL on this roster. And you have one of the best players in college football on your team for 4 more games guaranteed, and that's it. And it's like you've got to change your mindset if you're Steve Sarkisian, and it's got to trickle down into the locker room too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get the ball into Bijan Robinson's hands every chance I get in the second half of football games. That's what Mac Brown did with Ricky Williams. That's what the great, the great players want the ball.
Right.
They want to make the play that's going to win the game. They believe they can. Bijan
Yeah.
Robinson knows he can. He did it in that game last week. So
Yeah. And the only road win that Texas has had, true road game that Texas
correct.
has won under Steve Sarkisian, Bijan Robinson won that game in the fourth quarter. He ran the ball continuously, and he didn't go away for Steve Sarkisian didn't go away from it. If it means that Bijan has to have more than 30 carries, Bijan needs to have more than 30 carries because he's good enough to be that workhorse. He has shown it in the only win in Steve Sarkisian's time at Texas on the road. And it's like that never continues. And it's like, Sark, history is repeating itself in a negative way. Go back to the first road, when a Big 12 play and follow that script, because he's a guy that you want the ball in his hands at the end of the games, in my opinion.
Yep.
All right, final one for you. Love it or leave it. Texas finally ends its 5-game losing streak in true road games against Kansas State on November 5th.
I said I wouldn't predict Texas wins a road game until they win one. So I'm tempted though to love this because I do think that Sark has to have addressed some of this, and I think he has because he told us he did on Monday. And coming out of the bye week, knowing what's on the line, having the horrible taste of the Oklahoma State loss, I have to think the resolve of this football team is going to be such that they scratch, claw, crawl on broken glass to get a win at K-State. And before the season, I said this was a loss. Like, this was one of my 4 losses. I'm an idiot. I'm gonna love this. I'm gonna love this, Taylor. I think Texas wins this game. I think they have the resolve and they get it done. And if Daniel Green is out on that defense, I think that defense is suddenly gettable. How about you?
So before the season, I said that Texas was going to lose the Oklahoma State game. I changed my prediction for that game, and I was wrong by changing it. I, before the season, thought that Texas would lose to Kansas State. I'm not going to change that prediction until I see a road win, honestly. And I know I sound like Debbie Downer. I hope I'm wrong, honestly, because let's be honest, sometimes on Horns 24/7, it's not really fun on the message board after losses, and especially in the way that Texas has lost these road games this season, with having the lead in the second half only to lose it again, just like they had last season in a lot of those games too. I'm gonna, until I see it, I've got to say that I think Kansas State's a really good team. They're definitely, the depth is an issue on K-State. That was an issue going into the season. It was like if they have an injury at any key position, they're in trouble. However, Texas has historically not played well in Manhattan, Kansas. They've, I don't know off the top of my head what their road record is there, but I don't think they have a winning road record yet in Manhattan, Kansas. And until I see it show up, I can't really think it is at this point. I mean, 1 in 6, right? And true, or 1 in 6
1 in 6
road
in true
games.
road games under Sarkisian.
It's hard to shake. So prove me wrong. I will say that. Prove me wrong here. But I'm going to leave this and say that they will not end their 5-game losing streak.
Yeah, and Texas has actually won their last 2 in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Believe
Tom Herman. Yeah, his team.
Tom Herman won those 2 games.
Yeah. Hey, the last win was Bijan Robinson's coming out party too.
Yeah.
In 2020. Yeah.
Yep.
Sark, watch that tape and give Bijan Robinson the ball.
I mean, you don't think Bijan Robinson wants to shove it up Deuce Vaughn's, mouth guard? I mean, you got the 2 best running backs in the conference going head to head in that game. Bijan Robinson, just give him the football. Just jet sweeps, whatever it takes. 30 touches. Let Bijan Mustardson deliver that victory for you.
Put some mustard on it. Let's do it.
That's good mustard too. It's got a little horseradish taste to it.
I haven't tried it yet. I'm going to have to.
Good. It's
I may
good.
have to. My mom loves Bijan Robinson. He is like her favorite player of all time. So I may have to send her some of that too.
Yeah, you have to like order it, and it takes a minute to get there because you can't. It's like sold out everywhere, but it's good. It's
Is
good. I
that
got to give
Central
it to him.
Market?
Got to give it to him. All right,
I thought it
Taylor,
was
is that?
Central Market too, though, isn't it? There, they sell it there.
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah,
think so.
we need to make a stop there.
Um, my wife bought it, and it comes in a really funny box, funny package where like Bijan's trying to talk to you, and then he keeps answering the door, and it's funny. I mean, it's clever.
Yeah,
It's almost worth ordering for the box. So, all right, Taylor, is that it?
that's it.
All right. Well, listen, everybody, appreciate the mailbag live format today. That was fun. Maybe we'll do this more often.
Yeah,
Lot of good questions, a lot of good back and forth today. Thanks everybody for listening to the live mailbag version of the Flagship Podcast. For Taylor Estes, I'm Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Until then, stay safe and keep the faith.